You think you know humiliation? Wait until you hear how history's most ruthless dictators met their ends. 7 men who crushed millions under their boots, reduced to broken corpses, dragged through streets, hung upside down, or left to rot in. Unmarked graves. The same crowds that once cowered now spat on their faces. The same streets that echoed with their parades became their final shame. If you value documented historical research like this, subscribe. It's the best way to support our work. Also, comment from which city you're hearing this from. This script is researched and factual, using sources from historical archives and eyewitness testimonies. Now back to the story. Number 1. Benito Mussolini, April the 28th, 1945. Giulino di Mezzegra, northern Italy. Il Duce who promised a 1,000-year empire lasted 23 years. The man who strutted on balconies now hid in a German convoy, disguised in a Wehrmacht greatcoat and helmet. Communist partisans stopped the truck at 3:20 in the afternoon. Walter Audicio, codenamed Colonel Valerio, recognized the jutting jaw beneath the German uniform despite the fake spectacles and bandaged head. Your name? My name is Benito Mussolini. Those were his last coherent words. Audicio raised his submachine gun. The weapon jammed. He grabbed another MAB submachine gun from partisan Aldo Lampredi. 5 bullets into Mussolini's chest. His mistress, Clara Petacci, screamed and threw herself over his body. 2 more bullets silenced her forever. The dictator's body convulsed for 37 seconds before going still. Blood pooled beneath the man who once promised to restore the Roman Empire. But death was just the beginning. The bodies were loaded into a van and driven 68 kilometers to Milan's Piazzale Loreto, the same square where 15 Italian partisans had been executed and displayed 8 months earlier on August 10th, 1944. Revenge served cold on concrete. By 6 in the morning on April 29th, thousands had gathered. They hung Mussolini by his feet from a metal beam at an Esso gas station. His mistress Clara beside him, along with 3 other fascist officials. Blood dripped from their faces onto the pavement where children played hopscotch around the corpses. The crowd that once chanted his name now hurled stones, spat, and urinated on his corpse. Women beat his face with their handbags until his jaw dislocated. Maria Grazia Giuseppina fired 5 shots into his body with a borrowed pistol and declared, "5 shots for my 5 sons, killed in his war." His skull cracked under iron bars, swung by factory workers. Street vendors sold pieces of rope cut from the display. Photographers climbed onto cars and rooftops to capture the perfect angle. After 6 hours, hanging upside down, authorities finally cut him down when American troops arrived and demanded dignity. His face was unrecognizable. Bones protruded through skin. The dictator's dental gold had been pried from his broken mouth. Italian partisans had carved their initials into his forehead with bayonets. When they loaded him into a coffin, his neck bent at an impossible angle. The undertaker needed 3 hours to make his face presentable for the final photographs that would appear in newspapers worldwide. Stripped, beaten, hanging. Number 2, Adolf Hitler, April 30th, 1945. Berlin, the Führer bunker. The man who promised Germans a 1,000-year Reich delivered 12 years of ruin. Soviet artillery shells exploded 50 meters above his concrete tomb, buried 18 meters beneath the Reich Chancellery. The Red Army closed within 300 meters of his bunker complex. Marshal Georgy Zhukov's forces had surrounded Central. Berlin, with 360,000 troops and 41,600 artillery pieces. At 3:15 in the afternoon, after lunch with his secretaries Traudl Junge and Gerda Christian, Hitler bit down on a brass cyanide capsule and simultaneously shot himself through the right temple with his Walther PPK pistol, serial number 128464. Eva Braun, his wife of 36 hours, took poison beside him on their sitting room sofa. No dramatic speech, no final orders to his generals, just the sound of his body hitting the blue and white striped fabric as brain matter splattered the concrete wall behind him. His valet Heinz Linge opened the door 12 minutes later. The smell of bitter almonds from the cyanide filled the air. Hitler's jaw hung open, blood trickling from a dime-sized hole above his ear. Eva's lips were blue, her eyes rolled back. Both bodies were already cooling when bodyguard Rokas Misch helped carry them up 4 flights of stairs to the Reich Chancellery Garden. They wrapped Hitler in a gray army blanket, Eva in a tablecloth from the bunker kitchen. His aides poured 40 gallons of gasoline from jerry cans over both corpses, in a bomb crater. The flames reached 12 feet high, consuming what remained of the master race ideology, while Soviet Katyusha rockets whistled overhead. The fire burned for 3 hours. Bunker personnel threw furniture and documents onto the pyre to keep it burning. The acrid smoke mixed human flesh with burning leather from Hitler's personal library. His gold-capped teeth melted into slag. The wedding ring he had given Eva 40 hours earlier fused to her fingerbone. Soviet forces found the charred remains 3 days later in the same crater. Captain Ivan Klimenko recovered skull fragments and dental bridges. Stalin ordered forensic analysis at the Smersh laboratory in Berlin. The teeth matched Hitler's dental records perfectly, captured from his dentist, Hugo Blaschka. But Stalin kept the discovery secret, telling the world Hitler had escaped. He wanted the West to keep. Searching for a ghost. The bones were ground to powder in 1970 and scattered in the Biederitz River near Magdeburg. No grave, no monument, no pilgrimage site for Nazi faithful. The man who built monuments to himself across Europe became ash in the wind, his followers scattered like rats through the rubble of Berlin. The bunker where he died became a parking lot for East German bureaucrats. Even his suicide location was denied to history. The Reich that was supposed to last a millennium ended with a single gunshot in a concrete tomb. Poison, fire, nothing. Number 3, Nicolae Ceausescu. December 25th, 1989. Târgoviște, Romania. Christmas Day became Judgment Day. The conductor who ruled Romania for 24 years with an iron fist faced a 3-judge tribunal in a military barracks classroom. The trial lasted exactly 1 hour and 10 minutes. His wife Elena sat beside him in a blue coat, equally defiant. "This is a coup," he shouted at the camera's rolling film. "I do not recognize this court or its authority." Judge Gika Popa read 64 charges, including genocide of 60,000 civilians, undermining state power, and destroying the national economy through systematization policies that razed 8,000 villages. The prosecution presented evidence of Swiss bank accounts containing over $1 billion while Romanians froze in unheated apartments. Guilty on all counts. Death by firing squad within 2 hours of verdict. They were immediately led outside to a courtyard wall still marked with bullet holes from previous executions. Ceausescu straightened his black winter coat and sang the Internationale as soldiers raised their AKM rifles. Helena cursed the judges in broken French. The execution squad of 3 paratroopers from the 9th Paratrooper Battalion fired 43 bullets into the couple from 7 meters away. Elena died first, 7 bullets. To the chest and head, her body falling sideways against the white concrete. Nicolae took 36 rounds, his body jerking against the wall like a broken puppet before sliding down, leaving a red smear on the cement. The soldiers continued firing even after both bodies stopped moving. Empty shell casings littered the ground around the corpses. Blood splattered the white concrete behind them in patterns that forensic teams later mapped for evidence. Captain Marian Vlad continued shooting until his magazine emptied. State television broadcast the footage within hours on Romanian television channel 1. Anchor Teodor Brateș announced their deaths at 8:57 p.m. with a smile. Romanians, who had lived in fear for decades, watched their tormentors' blood pool on Christmas morning. In Bucharest, crowds gathered around television shops to see the bodies. People wept with joy in the streets. Church bells rang across the country for the first time in 40 years without state permission. Children who had never heard church bells thought it was some kind of celebration music. The bodies were thrown into wooden coffins built by prison carpenters and buried in unmarked graves in Ghensiei Cemetery's military section. Plot 35, row 11. For 20 years, nobody claimed them. Wild dogs dug around the graves looking for scraps. Rain washed their blood from the execution wall, but the bullet holes remained until the building was demolished in 2003. Their deaths aired. On television worldwide, watched by millions who had never heard of Romania, but recognized the sound of justice delivered at gunpoint. Judged. Shot. Broadcast. Number 4. Muammar Gaddafi. October 20th, 2011. Sirte, Libya. The brother leader who ruled Libya for 42 years died hiding in a drainage pipe like a rat. NATO airstrikes from French Mirage jets had pounded his convoy of 75 vehicles as it fled his hometown at 8:37 a.m. A Hellfire missile from an American Predator drone destroyed his golden-plated Toyota Land Cruiser, killing 3 bodyguards instantly, wounded and bleeding. From shrapnel in his legs and abdomen, the man who once commanded fear across Africa crawled into a concrete culvert beneath Highway 2. Rebel fighters from the Misrata Brigade dragged him out by his gray hair at 11:45 a.m. His golden gun, encrusted with his own portrait in diamonds, lay useless in the dirt beside a pool of his blood. The pistol was worth more than most Libyans earned in 10 years. My sons, he begged in Arabic. Don't shoot, don't shoot. But mercy was not on the menu that morning in the ruins of Sirte. Cell phone cameras captured everything in shaky footage that would go viral within hours. Nokia and Samsung devices recorded his final moments from dozen different angles. Rebel fighters beat him with rifle butts and iron bars until his skull cracked audibly. They sodomized him with a bayonet as he screamed for his mother. Blood poured from his head wounds, matting his gray hair against his scalp. "This is what you get, you dog," shouted 19-year-old fighter Abdulrahman al-Maladi. "Remember Abu Salim prison?" He was thrown alive onto the hood of a white Toyota pickup truck and paraded through Sirte's bombed-out streets for 47 minutes. Crowds gathered to spit on him, to touch his blood, to claim they were there when the tyrant fell. A bullet finally ended his agony at 12:32 p.m., but nobody claimed responsibility for the killing shot. Too many wanted credit. The autopsy would later show 17 bullet wounds from 7 different weapons. His body was displayed in a commercial meat freezer in Misrata's vegetable market for 4 days. The temperature was kept at exactly 4 degrees Celsius to slow decomposition. Thousands lined up around 3 city blocks to view the corpse and take selfies with their flip phones. Children poked his face with sticks, while their mothers held them up for better photos. The man who covered his palaces in gold lay in a refrigerator next to hanging beef and frozen fish. Vendors sold tea and sandwiches to the crowds waiting in line. His body began to decompose in the desert heat despite refrigeration. The stench of rotting flesh filled the warehouse by day 3. Flies gathered on his wounds. His skin turned green and started peeling off in sheets. Finally, tribal elders from the Kadadfa clan claimed the corpse and buried him in an unmarked grave in the Sahara Desert, 160 kilometers south of Sirte. His location remained secret to prevent pilgrimage or desecration by revenge seekers. The drainage pipe where they found him became a tourist attraction. Graffiti artists covered it with insults in Arabic and English. Someone welded iron bars across the opening. By 2015, the concrete had cracked and weeds grew through it, but people still came to see where the Lion of Africa died like a wounded animal, beaten, displayed, rotting. If you're finding this historical documentation valuable, make sure to subscribe and let us know in the comments which country you're watching from. This research comes from declassified government archives and court testimonies. Now back to our story. Number 5. Saddam Hussein, December 30th, 2006, Baghdad, Iraq. The Butcher of Baghdad met his end at the gallows in Camp Justice, a former Iraqi intelligence facility turned American detention center. The man who ruled Iraq for 24 years through chemical weapons and mass graves faced the noose at 6:05 on a Saturday morning during the Eid al-Adha holiday. His execution was supposed to be dignified, conducted according to Iraqi law, but dignity had no place in that concrete room. 3 Iraqi officials witnessed the execution: Judge Munir Haddad, Prosecutor Munkith al-Faroun, and National Security, Advisor Muwafaq al-Rubai. But Shiite guards had smuggled themselves into the execution chamber. They taunted him as Executioner Mubashir al-Haddad placed the hemp rope around his neck. "Go to hell," they chanted in Arabic while recording with a Motorola flip phone. Saddam replied calmly, "The hell that is Iraq." Those were his final words, spoken at exactly 6:05 a.m. Baghdad time. The trapdoor opened with a metallic clang that echoed through the chamber. His neck snapped instantly at the second cervical vertebra. The rope, imported from Pakistan and tested to hold exactly 190 pounds, stretched 12 centimeters under his weight. But someone had smuggled that cell phone past American security. Nasir al-Bandar, a guard loyal to Shiite cleric Muqtada al-Sadr, recorded 3 minutes and 54 seconds of grainy footage that changed everything. The video spread across the internet within 4 hours. First on Iraqi websites, then YouTube and Facebook. Millions watched the dictator's final moments on their computer screens. His legs kicked briefly for 23 seconds. Then, stillness. The man who once displayed his enemies' bodies on Iraqi television became a viral video himself, viewed over 12 million times in the first week. Iraq's government condemned the unauthorized recording and arrested al-Bandar, but the damage was done. The secrecy they wanted became global humiliation, broadcast in living rooms worldwide. His body was delivered by American helicopter to his tribal village of Al-Auja for burial in the same cemetery where his sons Uday and Qusay lay in unmarked graves. Even in death, controversy followed. Sunni mourners gathered at his grave, calling him a martyr of American imperialism. Shiites celebrated in Baghdad streets, firing AK-47 rifles into the air and dancing on pictures of his face. His tomb became a pilgrimage site for Sunni militants until ISIS destroyed it with sledgehammers in June 2014. The concrete slab that marked his grave was smashed to powder. The marble headstone with Quranic verses was used for target practice. The man who built 58 palaces across Iraq now rests beneath a pile of rubble in a village no tourist will ever visit. Wild dogs roam the cemetery where 3 generations of his family decompose in the desert sand. American forces found his hiding place 11 months before his execution. A 6-foot underground hole covered by a styrofoam plug and bricks near a 2-room mud hut in Ad-Dor. The man who lived in palaces with golden toilets was pulled from an earthen tomb like a prairie dog. He had 2 AK-47 rifles, but never fired a shot. His last meal was a piece of bread and an orange. Even his capture was humiliating. Taunted, recorded, erased. Number 6. Idi Amin. August 16th, 2003. Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. The butcher of Uganda died not in violence but in exile, forgotten and humiliated by irrelevance. After 8 years of terror that killed 300,000 Ugandans, he fled to Libya in April 1979 when Tanzanian forces and Ugandan exiles invaded with 20,000 troops. Even Muammar Gaddafi grew tired of his madness and expelled him to Saudi Arabia in 1980 after Amin demanded his own television show and military command. The man who once declared himself His Excellency President for Life failed. Marshal al-Haji, Dr. Idi Amin Dada, VC, DSO, MC, Lord of all the beasts of the earth and fishes of the seas, and conqueror of the British Empire in Africa, in general and Uganda in particular, lived his final 24 years as a nobody in a 3-bedroom apartment in Jeddah's Al Nasim district. The Saudis gave him a monthly allowance of $4,000, enough to live comfortably, but not enough for the golden throne he once occupied in Kampala. He spent his days at Al Rashid Mall buying vegetables and arguing with shopkeepers over prices and broken Arabic. Former bodyguards abandoned him. His 4 wives divorced him one by one. His children moved to England and changed their names, refusing to visit their father in his Saudi exile. The man who once ate human flesh and fed bodies to crocodiles in the Nile watched Egyptian soap operas alone in his apartment, growing fat on rice and lamb, while his victims' families rebuilt their lives in peace. He died of kidney failure in King Faisal Specialist Hospital Room, 412 at 4:17 a.m. No state funeral. No military honors. No crowds of mourners. Just medical equipment and the beeping of monitors that recorded his final heartbeat. The doctors who treated him didn't know his history. To them, he was just another old man whose organs had failed. His medical chart listed his name as Idi Amin Dada, occupation, retired. No mention of the genocide or the torture chambers or the 300,000 graves. The former self-proclaimed King of Scotland was buried in a simple grave in Ruwais Cemetery. Plot number 647, Section B. Only his surviving family. Members attended, 2 wives, 6 children, and 12 grandchildren who barely knew him. No heads of state, no diplomatic delegations, no television cameras. The man who forced foreign diplomats to carry him on their shoulders was lowered into sand by a handful of relatives who spoke in whispers and left immediately after the ceremony. His gravestone bears only his name and dates in Arabic script. Idi Amin Dada, 1925 to 2003. Nothing about his titles or conquests or the empire he claimed stretched from the Mediterranean to the Indian Ocean. The inscription doesn't even mention Uganda. Cemetery workers water other graves, but leave his to bake in the desert sun. Weeds grow through the cracked marble. Uganda refused to take his body back when Saudi officials offered repatriation. President Yoweri Museveni declared him a non-person who had forfeited his citizenship through genocide. His victims' families celebrated. When news reached Kampala, the Nile he once fed with corpses flows on without him. His palaces are museums, now displaying his torture devices to tourists who pay admission fees to see where evil lived. The crocodiles he fed with human flesh died of old age years before him. He died as he feared most, irrelevant, alone, and forgotten by history, except as a cautionary tale told to children about monsters who wear uniforms and smile while they kill. His final words were asking a nurse for water. Even his last request was ordinary, forgotten, buried, nobody. Number 7, Pol Pot, April 15th, 1998, Halong Bang, Cambodia. Brother number 1 died under house arrest in the Cambodian jungle, probably poisoned by his own Khmer Rouge comrades who feared he would expose their locations to international tribunals. The architect of the killing fields that murdered 2 million Cambodians in 3 years and 8 months never faced justice. No trial, no execution, no day in court for the families of his victims. Just a sudden heart attack at age 72 that many believe was assisted with rat poison mixed into his evening rice. His final years were spent fleeing through the forests he once used to hide his genocide machine. The man who emptied Phnom Penh and marched city dwellers to their deaths lived in a bamboo hut with a dirt floor and no electricity. Former comrades abandoned him as they negotiated surrender. Deals with the Cambodian government. Tamok, his military chief, kept him under guard more as prisoner than leader. The revolutionary who banned money spent his last months begging for aspirin and clean water. His body was discovered at 6:47 a.m. by his wife, Mia Sun, slumped over a wooden table where he had been writing letters to former comrades, asking for medicine. The man who killed intellectuals for wearing glasses died wearing thick spectacles himself. His final letter, never sent, was to his daughter in China, asking for $500 to buy heart medication. The communist who abolished private property died penniless. His body was burned on a pile of old tires and rubbish in the jungle clearing where he lived. No ceremony, no prayers, no Buddhist monks to chant his spirit into the next life, just smoke and ashes and the smell of burning rubber. His wife Mia Sun threw personal belongings onto the fire. A mosquito net, some clothes, a bamboo sleeping. Matt, his reading glasses. Neighbors watched from 30 meters away, afraid to approach the flames that consumed the man who had haunted their nightmares for 20 years. Even the flames seemed reluctant to consume him. The fire burned for 6 hours before his bones crumbled to powder. His skull cracked audibly in the heat, like a coconut shell. Tomok swept the ashes into the dirt with a stick cut from a tree branch. No urn, no burial site, no marker to remember. Where brother number 1 became dust, and the ashes mixed with dirt and were trampled by water buffalo within days. The location was kept secret for years to prevent revenge attacks by survivors' families. Journalists who tried to find it were turned away at gunpoint by remaining Khmer Rouge soldiers. Local villagers refused to speak about the burning, crossing themselves and spitting when his name was mentioned. Finally, in 2010, a small wooden sign marked the spot where his funeral pyre had burned. Weeds grew through rusted metal from the tire fire. Rain had washed away any trace of his remains. The man who declared year zero for Cambodia became zero himself. No grave, no monument, no legacy except the skulls that fill the Tuol Sleng Genocide Museum and the killing fields where his victims still surface after heavy rains. Children born after his death don't know his name. The revolution he started with dreams of agrarian paradise ended with bones and rice fields and a pile of melted tires in a jungle clearing that no one visits. His glasses, the symbol of intellectual corruption he executed others for wearing, melted into the flames that consumed his corpse. The irony was lost on no one who remembered the killing fields where teachers and doctors died for the crime of literacy. Even his ashes refused to stay put, blown away by monsoon winds like the lives he destroyed, burned, scattered, forgotten. But here's what they never tell you about these 7 deaths. A mass grave discovered in 2019 outside Sirte contains 43 bodies, with bullet wounds matching the ammunition used by Gaddafi's forces in their final weeks. The same rebels who killed him had been his victims just months before. The humiliation was never about justice. It was about revenge served at room temperature in concrete pipes and meat freezers. History remembers the dictators. It forgets their victims had names, too.